This episode of Monty's Minute is brought to you by Netflix. For a free 30-day trial, head on over to netflix.com/GamebreakerTV. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Monty's Minute, episode number 21 for February 14th, 2013. I'm Gary Gannon. You're watching Gamebreaker TV. And, of course, joining me, as always, the man of the hour who's got the answers to your questions, Mr. Monty Sharma. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Gary. How you doing?
I am holding up. You got the massive snowstorm last week.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. We got, I'm going to say 27 inches or so, and it drifts up to,
27
5-6 feet.
inches.
Yeah, but it was light snow, like it was dry snow. So it took 2 hours for the snowblower to cut through it, but it wasn't like when it was slushy. So I'm not going to complain.
See, I'm originally an East Coaster, but now I'm a softie because I live in Los Angeles. So I don't even know what snow is like anymore. It rains, and I'm like, no, it's raining. 27 inches. So we got a new little segment to go this week. So I guess from time to time we're gonna start profiling more people from the industry to get more from different people throughout the industry, different producers, executive producers, CEOs, whoever who give us some insight to how they got into the industry. And we've got our first one this week. So we've got Kayla Kinnuin. Did I pronounce that correctly?
I believe so. I try and avoid pronouncing it. I just call her Kayla.
Kayla. She's a producer at Roadhouse Interactive. Where are they located?
They're out of Vancouver.
Out of Vancouver. And you talked about that. That's where you were a couple of weeks ago, correct?
Yeah, I was. So they're doing MechWarrior Tactics, and they got a bunch of secret projects that they're working on. And she's one of the producers.
All right, cool. Let's check out the video.
Hi, I'm Kayla, and I'm a producer at Roadhouse Interactive. I went to school in Thunder Bay, Ontario at a community college. I completed 2 years of a 3-year multimedia program before quitting school and moving out to Vancouver to get a job in the .com industry. I started as a Flash programmer, and that job lasted about 6 months before the .com industry collapsed and I was unemployed. Electronic Arts had a studio in town, and I thought I would apply there. Didn't end up getting the job that I applied for, but they ended up hiring me as a QA tester there. I worked for 10 years at Electronic Arts, and while I was there, I got to work on tons of projects in the FIFA, NBA, NHL, Need for Speed, and SSX franchises. While I was there, I also got to interview a lot of people. And so some of the things I like to look in a job applicant are passion for games. I like to have somebody that actually plays games on a regular basis. It seems like common sense, but you'd be surprised at how many people I've interviewed that just don't play games. I like somebody that knows the difference between playing games and making games. Just because you enjoy playing games doesn't mean you're actually going to enjoy making games. I like someone that has solid communication skills. Making games is a team effort. It requires collaboration between lots of people, and someone that can convey their ideas and thoughts to others effectively end up working out very well. I like somebody that's also adaptable and flexible. Projects can go sideways very quickly on games. And people that can learn and react to change quickly end up working out quite well. And finally, I like someone that's actually made a game. Nowadays, there are so many tools available. There's Flash, there's Unity. There's really no excuse to not make a game. So spend a weekend, get some friends together, prototype something. You'd be surprised how much you can learn by just making a game. Thank you very much.
Wow, sounds like some of the stuff we kind of talk about here on the show there, Monty. Make a game, solid communication. A lot of the things you've been hitting on for weeks. One of the things that stood out to me in that video to start with was the statement that she said that games are a collaborative effort. And I think a lot of people forget that there's so many people on this team, and you do have to be flexible and have good communication skills and to be able to work with others. You're that lone person who just thinks all their ideas are like golden and like it's, this is the way you do it. You're probably not going to last that long.
Exactly. And in the producer role, what she's really doing is she's working across all of the teams. So she's, the technical team, the back end services team, the operations group, the arts team, all of these things to make sure that, the plan's working, everybody understands what everybody else is doing. And then when it really comes to monetizing things, Kayla actually schooled me. Unbelievable. She went on for about an hour and a half one day explaining monetization systems and what works and what doesn't work and the problems with those things. It was absolutely fascinating. And I'm a guy who really hates accounting. But, when she broke it down, she really understood the detail behind what made it happen. And it's that organizational sense that she has that's incredibly valuable. And, I think one of the other big things is she didn't take a straight path. She didn't have any of the degrees that people normally think they need to have. She started off as a Flash programmer, and then she took a job as QA. And that's just one of the things of, she didn't get the job she applied for, but she took a job she could get. And she's that good that she worked herself into, some awesome franchises and great credit.
And I think that's something, yeah. I mean, and I think she probably, to her credit, she condensed a lot of probably like her hard work and effort in there, and kind of went like from a QA and now I'm a producer. Then all of a sudden it's like I worked 10 years at EA and now I'm a producer at Roadhouse. So I'm sure there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears behind all those years after the QA. But in a QA job, not a simple job to get, right? But not out of the reach of a lot of like people with some really good smarts and who are gamers, right? I mean, they do hire some people in QA with, dare I say, like kind of no experience to some extent, don't they?
It is an entry point position, and QA, especially when you're doing sort of bug hunting, you get a very regimented program that you follow through. And if you're somebody who can follow detailed instructions, write up a detailed bug report, you're going to do great in QA. They're going to love you. And then they're going to get a sense of who you are, what you're capable of. And the leads from the other teams are always trolling through QA to see if they can pick somebody up. But the other thing that's starting to happen in QA is it's moving from being a starting point to a destination for a lot of people, because they get more and more into gameplay QA and, really understanding what's happening in the play side of it versus the, just finding bugs. And in the last, I can't even tell you how many sort of tournaments I've seen between QA versus the GMs. QA usually cleans house.
Yeah, they're usually the sick gamers. And I think that, when you get in, and when you can get in at one of those entry level positions, I've also often told people in another industry, like I'll bring back to television again, is think of yourself as a wedge. Once you're there, how do you just wedge in? You just need to like wedge it under the door. And then when you get under, you can start prying things like a crowbar, just slowly just inching it out. And then you can be seen and show off what your skills are and really kind of like get some notice. Thanks so much to Kayla for that video. I love this idea that you're putting together. So Monty's going to go out and start bringing more of these in, and we get to hear some more outside sources, which is going to be awesome. All right. So first up this week, our question from Johan T-Man Tortenson. He says, hello, I have a question regarding spell effects and such in game. He says, back in the day of City of Heroes, so they couldn't change spell effect colors because they were hard-coded. And with the release of the green fire to warlocks in World of Warcraft, and the time it took, he says, I keep wondering if they also hard-coded their colors. And so why do companies do things like this? Having a flexible system from the start must be a better system than having to rip code apart and break stuff. I'm talking about like modular programming, having the option to inject code easily into the game without having to tough the old code. So I'm confused by that as well. Why would they make something as simple as like a color picker for something like that be hard coded into the game?
Yeah, so there's two possible answers here, and I don't know the truth. So, this is Monty's guess, not fact. One is that's a kind of answer you might give somebody as a variation of shut up and leave me alone. that, hey, that's hard to do because it's locked in. And, it's programmers, if they want to do something, they do it. They don't want to do it, you'll get answers like this sometimes.
Gotcha.
Now, let's put that aside and let's talk about, software architecture a little bit, because that's exciting. There's sort of three levels of, how you can handle variables. There's lots more if you do it professionally, but, just for us folks. First is you can hard code it. So I want the spell to be this color, and I put in that color, and it's simple. I do it, and I'm done. Okay, so it's actually faster to just hard code the stuff in. The next thing is you use variables. So you assign a variable to the spell color, and then you can use that in several different places. And if you want to change it, you only have to change the variable value, and it cascades through your code. A little more effort. And look, I'm a terrible I'm not even a programmer. I used to be a bad programmer. I am now not even a bad programmer. I would often start things like my first cut at something would be hard coded in, just so I get a sense of the flow and the logic and all of that. And then I'd rewrite it, and I'd have variables in that. Now, the third way to do it is you do make everything not just modular, but you make it so it's easy for somebody to change these things. So you almost want to put an admin console up that says, what do you want for this color? What do you want for that color? And somebody can go in and change those things.
Even more
that
work.
Again, yeah, it's even more work. And so, what tends to happen is you're under pressure and you've got a sprint and you need to do, these 10 things in this sprint. Well, one of the things took 3 times as long as it should have. You still want to get this thing done. What do? Well, all right, we're going to do this way, and it's going to be a bit of a shortcut. And what good programmers will do is they will what they call refactor their code. And refactoring their code really means going back and doing it the way they really would have liked to have done it if they had more time. And so over time, code gets cleaned up. It gets set up in a better way, and that's what happens in systems.
How are do you have any insight onto how some of the off-the-shelf engines, like we talked a bit about the Hero engine last week and things like that, are those kind of already built in with like dashboards and sort of, dare I say, like WYSIWYG-esque kind of admin panels?
Yeah, there's more tools there because that's what they've built. And we've talked before about the role of a tools programmer.
Mm-hmm.
And so a tools programmer will do things like, oh, okay, you need an easy way to change the colors and all these things. All right, I'll build that interface. I'll link it into all these variables, and I'll pull it through. Actually, last night I was at a session, and a guy there, Jonathan Myers, who's a narrative designer, was talking about pipeline tools for handling narrative design, and I never really thought about it that way. But he got into a lot of the details of how do you handle all this stuff, how do you manage it, and that's what a tools programmer will do for you.
It's true. It's a lot of narrative. You never think about what they do with all that text. We just think about all that other stuff. Crazy. All right, next up, this one is from Mike. He says, "Hello, Monty. I'm curious how an online degree for something like game design is looked at by the industry in comparison to attending a trade school or university in person, and for something less focused like Camp Sci. If it isn't frowned upon, what schools would you recommend for getting an online degree in game design or something similar? And if not able to give me any specific recommendations, what are some of the things I can look for from a school's curriculum that is a must-have? I've only looked at Full Sail so far, and I hear a lot of mixed reviews about its program." I could probably add some more mixed reviews to that program as well.
Yeah. So I won't comment on Full Sail directly. I will say that, when I talk to hiring managers, they're not fans of these for-profit schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's a difference between a college or a technical school who is acting as a nonprofit versus a lot of people have gotten into the very big business of educating folks. And sort of what happens is their focus is in selling seats, right?
Yes.
So they will let anybody in. They will try and graduate as many as they can, but they get nailed for their graduation percentage. They'll make it really easy for you to get loans. The problem is you'll walk away with a ton of debt. So that part aside, what hiring managers tell me, and what you said is, you don't know what you're getting out of one of these programs. When you have somebody who comes out of a college, what's happened is they've had to jump through hoops to get in. The college has to be accredited, and they get reviewed on a regular basis. The accreditation agency comes through and makes sure that their courses are correct. Every time they add a course, it has to be approved through a curriculum committee and things like that. So they tend to be less flexible than some of the for-profit schools, but there's a lot more rigor behind it, so the output is a lot more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
For some of these online schools, what your output is a lot to do with what the input is. So if you're a bright, talented, hardworking person and you go to one of these schools, you'll come out with a good set of skills that you can work with. But for a hiring manager, they can't tell that from your resume. They can't see that, and that's really the problem.
Yeah, and again, I'm not speaking on any of them specifically on my end as well, but I know several. I never attended anything like that, but I know several people who have attended similar schools to like Full Sail and things like that, and I personally have never heard one of them actually feel like it was worth the cost and the time spent. Most of them, I've heard the exact same story over and over in games and with what we do in media, as well as in television and film. Once they actually got out into the workforce, and this has even happened here at Gamebreaker with about 2 people, I won't mention names, but they learned more within 2 to 3 months of actually working here or working on a television show or working on a film than they did for like 4 years in one of those schools. What they teach you at those schools is, I'm not going to, there definitely are skills that you could pick up and you'll learn, but you can, I'm totally with you. I say university is the way to go, or it is like, if you can't afford the university or don't have time, I would say get your butt as fast as possibly as an intern, sweeping floors, Q&A, whatever you can, get in, and you'll probably learn a ton more.
Right. And a lot of universities and colleges are offering online programs. So, if you live in some remote place or you've got a day job, you can find things. I just encourage you to stick with the accredited institutions.
All right, next up from Lagless, he says, hey guys, wishing you all the best. As you know, many games are usually based on stories in some way or another, lore, mythos, and such. I don't think it matters whether it's from books, comics, mangas, novels, etc. If it has the potential, it can be a good game. A lot of known heroes that exist today are what make the big bucks. Many things that is made today is from stuff that were created years ago. So my question is, do you think that there is still a chance for new heroes to exist today and be successful, or do people not care anymore and only care for the stuff they've known for so long?
So, I point to Kick-Ass. Now that's a great hero.
Yeah.
There's, I think, so if you go the literature professor route, all of the heroes that exist are variations of archetypes that have existed since the days of the Greeks, right?
The hero's journey.
There's certain attributes, their critical flaws, all that sort of thing that's there. But remixing and recreating heroes is entirely possible. I actually look at the Assassin's Creed franchise, and hey, they pulled that out of nowhere. That was a new IP. Props to the team at Ubisoft that really put in the effort to make something that unique and carry it out. And that's a really interesting hero. Look at Mass Effect. That
was my next one. I was going to say Mass Effect was a great one. I mean, The Witcher is a great one. I think there's tons of great ones out there.
Yeah, I think the door's still wide open. We're going to see a lot of new, different heroes. And the whole reboot concept in Hollywood, I think, is going to come back with us looking at heroes in different ways as well.
All right, next up, this one from Dean Barrett. Dean says, hello, my question is about breaking into the industry as a writer. Is it possible to break into the gaming industry as a story writer without prior knowledge or developing a game in terms of coding or software? Do companies openly look for story writers? And if they do, what would be required for your pitch to pitch your skills or an original idea? Love the shows. Thanks for all the hard work guys put in. Dean Barrett. This is a bit of a tough area to break into, is it not?
Yeah. So, writing is one of those things that you're not going to break in unless you've got stuff that's written and stuff that people recognize and say, oh, wow, okay, that's good stuff. You may definitely have to take a different route. The other thing is when you talk about writing, I go back to, the guy I saw last night, Jonathan Myers, who is a narrative designer. So he's working on things that aren't just the dialogue or the background story or lore or things like that. He's doing things like, okay, so what is the story of these items? What is the imagery, and how does that connect to the art, and how does that connect to the storyline? So really designing a storyline with all of the elements in it. And, he told the story of Mirror's Edge, where they built all the gameplay, and then they went to a rather talented writer and said, okay, now put a story around this. It's a fun game, but the story doesn't really work, doesn't jive with the game itself. And so that narrative designer role is something that's emerging stronger and stronger. His point was, it's not always a full-time job. He freelances to a bunch of different companies. He worked on Jack Lumber, the Game of Thrones Ascent, which I'm actually really looking forward to, from Disruptor Beam.
Why do you think? Let me ask you a question. I'm going to interject because this is something that I actually like. I'm a huge RPG fan. I mean, it's like it's a small sliver of the gaming industry, but I love it. Like, I love really good story. I'm playing through The Witcher 2 again, and I'm like, wow, this is really good writing. These are writers who they're not pandering to the audience. They're not really. I mean, I was talking about this last night. We were having a really long conversation about it. I was like, this is probably the closest I can come to. It's not a Game of Thrones level of writing, but it's like the closest I've seen in gaming, where there's just all these different characters and intricate storylines, and who's got the bastard children of who, and the throwing of this, and blah. And it's quite. Why don't we see more of that? Is it just that there's not a big enough? I mean, you see shows like Game of Thrones taking off as far as in that era of media, and people obviously like this really crazy, corrupt, and it's not just like explosions. Yeah. Why haven't we seen that level of writing in games? Because even the top tier of RPG games still don't really have the caliber of writers that Hollywood has.
Well, yeah, because Hollywood pays better. Come on, man.
But games make more money than Hollywood. They should be able to pay these guys more. I'm almost wondering if lot of the developers don't really possibly think that it's on that high enough on the priority list, and there's so many other things they think are more important.
Yeah, it's something that's evolving. I mean, think back to Hollywood in like the 70s and 80s, where there was a whole lot of schlock and recycled crap and things like that. And then there's been a bit of a snapback with people actually trying to produce grittier, more interesting things. Look at TV now. I mean, TV is so much more interesting than it used to be. Yeah. And so, I think with the games side, there's two things. One is you will repeatedly hear from developers, gamers don't like to read. And so the amount of text you can put up is somewhat limited. Gamers do not like long cutscenes or voiceovers or things like that. They don't want to wait for that. So, you've got that on one side, and then on the other side, you have a cost issue of you got to pay voice actors. You're paying writers, but the writers have a different role when it's very story-driven. So when it's really story-driven, the writers really got to nail a lot of these things down before the artists and the programmers really roll. And so just in terms of development methodology and cycles and all of that, it makes it much more complex. I mean, look at SWTOR. They wanted to have, all sorts of content, dialogue, all of that sort of stuff. That made it a very expensive game to build. It took them a long time to do it. And at the end of the day, it's, okay, so what is that? What's the payoff? And I wonder if there's sort of a push-pull between the payoff of the dialogue and the story versus that visceral feeling you get while you're playing the game. So XCOM doesn't have a lot of dialogue in it. The story is relatively shallow. But when one of my guys gets popped, I feel it.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm at that sliver of 1% that wants that gameplay. So that's why we see like 1 or 2 games a year that are kind of breakouts like that. But it's always me hoping.
We call them Gary's games. I
know. I'm just glad to see CD Projekt is actually doing them. I think they're one of the few that really, are doing them. And like Cyberpunk and Witcher 3 is gonna be awesome. But yeah, all right, I'm the 1%er. That's it. All right. Next up, he says, "Hey guys, I'm working on a fantasy series and writing the first novel. After I finish the series, I want to write for games, lore, plots, dialogue, anything really. How do developers feel about hiring novelists? Are they accepted in the industry? Any tips, insights, or general info would be helpful. Love the show, Greg." So another writer trying to break in.
Yeah. So here's the thing: if you're a budding novelist, if your novel has been published, then that's looked at with a considerable respect. It is very hard to write a book. It's a ridiculously difficult thing. If your novel has not been published, or it's been self-published, or the Amazon imprint, I wouldn't bring it up. I would show them other writing. There's been 2 or 3 times I've had somebody I was interviewing say, "Oh yeah, I love to do this, can't wait to work for you. And, on the side, I'm writing a novel." And the lights go off and you begin to wonder, okay, is this person going to be so distracted with their novel they're not going to work? Yep. Are they a closet fruitcake? I mean, what's the deal here? So if you haven't been published, I wouldn't say anything. I bring them shorter form writing. And again, you may find your path in through marketing or community or QA, and then establish yourself as somebody who can write within the company, and then look for one of these narrative positions.
And I'll often say something that you say every week is I would say you're probably still better off trying to go to a game jam, meet up with some people, and write for a game. Because I can tell you this, when you do go for an interview, if you get past the first round where they actually, give you the callback or whatever, they're going to send you some really specific instructions and tasks in order to write for a game. And it's not necessarily like writing a novel, right? Like you're going to have to write like quest chains and branching things, and they're going to give you some very specific things. And if you don't know how to write for that stuff because you've only written a novel, they're not looking for you. Like you may know how to write like a story, but you have no idea really how the games industry is going to work around an adventure game like that or something, or whatever they're writing for. So again, you need to get some friends. This is like the best advice I think this show could give is get some friends, go to the game jam, get some friends, go to the game jam and make a damn game. No, I mean, Kayla said the same thing too, right? I look for somebody who made a game. Make a game. That's it. Monty Sharma, follow him on the Twitter at Monster with a T, MONTSTER 27. And of course, if you have questions for Monty, you can always send them to submit@gamebreaker.tv. And if you have video questions, just record yourself on your webcam, post it up on YouTube, send us the links. Just shoot it over by email to submit, or not submit, it's Monty@gamebreaker.tv. That's the email address. Monty, pleasure as always. We'll be back again for some more next week. Try and get some people some careers going here.
Yeah, we'll see you, Gary.
Have a great week. See you next week, everybody.